How are you guys? Welcome back to Wargaming China, and today I'm going to talk about how history constantly has to be reappraised and reassessed. Now today is the 18th of September, and if you're a child growing up in China, in mainland China at the moment, you will be taught that today is the beginning of the war of resistance against Japanese aggression. Because today is the anniversary of the Mukden incident. I talked about the Mukden incident previously in the video called The Young Marshal's Army and the Assault on the Badian Garrison. But today I want to talk about my own perceptions and how they have changed as far as the war is concerned. Now, when I first started building my armies, I was a believer that the war started at Marco Polo Bridge on July 7th, 1937. Now then, as I said before, Chiang's standing order to all of the armed forces in China that he controlled or were under his control was non-aggression, non-provocation. No matter what the Japanese did, the Chinese forces, whether they provincial, government or clique, were under a standing order of non-provocation against the Japanese aggressors. Now then, as I said, it is written in many books that the war starts on the 7th of July 1937, but these books need to be reappraised, because on the 7th of July 1937, when the men of a company of the 29th Army resisted the Japanese at Beijing, the Marco Polo Bridge, in a number of incidents, they were doing so against government orders. So therefore, we must ask ourselves, is a rogue general acting alone, or a rogue commander of a company acting alone, entitled to take his country into war? Now, we could say it doesn't really matter if he had if he was acting against orders or obeying orders, because that's when the fighting started. But on the July 8th, Chiang's General Qing agreed to a formal ceasefire with the Japanese, a ceasefire which the Japanese themselves broke. Now then, as I learned more about what we call in the West the Second Sino-Japanese War, I became of the opinion that World War II started on August 13th, 1937, when Chiang, for the first time, orders his troops to attack. Now, even though Chiang orders his troops to attack on the 13th of August, 1937, on the 14th of August, he ordered a cessation of hostilities. Not a ceasefire with the Japanese, but he ordered his own forces to stop with the assault. And then on the 15th, he changed his mind again and acquiesced to a greater assault on the Japanese in Shanghai, which shows you what a procrastinator Chang really was. Now many people say, no Adam, you're wrong there. World War II started on the 1st September when the Germans invaded Poland. And I agree with that now. Because for me now, I agree with the Education Department of China. And China has a population of over 1 billion. That the war of resistance against Japanese aggression starts on the 18th of September 1931 with the Japanese attacking. And it doesn't matter what the communists were doing or what the nationalists were doing. This is when Japanese aggression started, and this is when Japanese expansionism within China started. So this should be regarded as the beginning of what some Westerners or many people would call the Second Sino-Japanese War. Now, I want us to stop calling it the Second Sino-Japanese War, because for me, it just seems like unfair and kind of colonialism for Westerners to be naming a war that China fought mainly on her own, that was paid for with Chinese lives and Chinese blood. So I don't want to, you will never hear me referring to this war as the Second Sino-Japanese War. I am in total agreement with the Chinese Education Department that this is the war of resistance against Japanese aggression from 1931 until 1945. Now, on the 7th of December 1941, the war of aggression, the war of resistance against Japanese aggression, becomes part of the greater war that is World War II. But that's when the war with China and Japan becomes part of a greater war. But it still doesn't mean that it's correct to call this war the Second Sino-Japanese War, because as I said, it's China's war, and eventually when all these children are educated and grow up, you're going to be arguing this with over 1 billion people, and to be honest, over 1 billion people cannot be wrong. So there's my take on it. It's the anniversary of the beginning of the war of resistance against Japanese aggression, and I for one want us all to stop referring to this war as the Second Sino-Japanese War. It's China's history, China fought it, and I think it's only right that China should name it. However, I mean, even up to last week, an author that I love, Ben Shi, who's an expert on small arms of China, released a book recently, The Small Arms of the Sino-Japanese War. So a lot of authors are using this just to fit into an existing narrative. But I, however, started this channel because I thought I had something to add to the history, but also I started this channel because I wanted us to remember, as we head into the uncertain times of the 21st century, especially here in the Pacific, I'm in Australia, that we have to start agreeing on the past before we can ever hope to start to agree what the future should be. So I put all my armies out today, and I just wanted to give a quick chat about that. And you know, you can disagree with me or agree with me, but the population of mainland China would agree with me and would not recognize it at first when you said to them the Second Sino-Japanese War, because that is not how they're taught this war. I don't know how this subject is approached in other parts and other education departments, because for me at school it was taught as the Second Sino-Japanese War. But as I said, history always must be reassessed and reappraised. So let us start calling it the War of Resistance against Japanese aggression from 1931 to 1945. The Chinese soldier fought with the least for the longest. Thanks very much. See ya.